Oh, I always forget how much tension we carry there. We carry in the jaw. So open it wide. Ah, oh, oh. So consider this your reminder. We'll start in a couple of minutes. But let's arrive as humans, as we are about to arrive as meditators or listeners. So just arriving humanly. Do not there's no show, there's no stage. Just simply arrive however you are. Maybe you are finding comfort in your home, maybe you're finding comfort outside, maybe you are running around doing errands. That's also fine. Those are all part of being human. So let's arrive however we are. Take a nice deep breath in through the nose and sigh it out. Just notice where you are, the light in your room, the surrounds, the rhythm of your in-breath. There's something so beautiful about tens of us, breathing quietly together across the world right now. Might be in different places, but we are sharing this one quiet moment. So I've always find the first few minutes of these sessions often challenging. It's kind of funny. It's like a party where people walk in one by one and you're not sure if I should start the music yet. So let's just take this as a soft landing. I know I have done this, 600 times, but every time the first few minutes is a little challenging. And it's funny because I often resort to the same words I use all the time. And I don't know whether you notice it or not, but I notice it in my mind. I keep repeating the same words. So like welcome, welcome, welcome. So just to re-emphasize. And that is just a observation. It's not really an insight or anything. It's just funny how when we get into the flow, we have a lot to talk about. But when the first few minutes, it's just interesting. Reading the room is very interesting because there is just me and the camera, because you guys are virtual. So it's not, I cannot feed off the energy. I can only feed off the vibes I get. So whenever we are ready, let us begin. So I invite you to take this moment to pause. And in today's practice, we are finding soft strength. Now, what does that mean? So you know the moment when you are trying so hard to stay calm that you actually get stressed about being calm? That is it. That is the paradox of being human. We live in a world that worships hustle, optimization, and self improvement, and it's like a religion. And don't get me wrong, I love a good morning routine as well. But not as much as the next mindful overachiever. But sometimes all that doing, all that becoming, all that doing becomes another form of tightening. Our shoulders are tense. Our breath shortens. Our mind starts managing life like an unpaid intern, and that is where we are. So today, I want to talk about something most of us have forgotten how to do, is to cultivate soft strength. Is that quiet confidence that comes not from control, but from trust, from doing your best and then letting life take care of the rest. Let's be honest, letting go feels terrifying, right? But somewhere deep down, we've confused ease with laziness, surrender with giving up, and softness with weakness. But if softness isn't the opposite of strength, what if it's the highest, most refined version of strength? Think about it. Water is soft, but it shapes rocks over time. A tree that doesn't bend in the wind breaks. And yet, most of us go through life bracing for some sort of impact when maybe what we really need to do is soften it up. I'll tell you something I learned the hard way. When I was younger, I thought resilience meant pushing through everything: pain, fatigue, heartbreak, deadlines, and even my intuition. It took me years to realize that that kind of strength has an expiry date, and I found it the hard way. Soft strength, on the other hand, lasts. Is what lets you recover faster, love deeper, and laugh at the absurdity of it all. So, let us dive deep into soft strength today. And here are some thoughts you can start to think about while you engage in this conversations. Is, have you ever noticed that harder you try to control things, the more chaotic life feels? This is a common one. What if strength isn't about pushing harder, but about knowing when to soften? And here's a interesting, really pertinent question. When was the last time you gave yourself permission to rest? And here's the kicker: without guilt. If you stop trying to be the most productive version of yourself for a week, who would you be? Do you trust that the things can still move forward even when you are not forcing them? Do you trust that? That is a very challenging question. Do you trust that the things you have done will have an impact? And here's a very fascinating idea: the more you let go, the more the universe, the world, everything opens up. And it is not just a spiritual idea, it is actually truth. This is how you learn. This is a fact. When you learn, when you try to learn a new skill, they often talk about taking breaks in between and resting and thinking about something else. So this is where, when you take a rest, the brain and the mind rewires itself and finds the different connections, and opportunities start to form because you're not forcing yourself. And that is a very powerful way, but often we don't do it because we have been kind of programmed. So here we are trying to understand the subtle difference between this self-discipline and self-abuse. So how do we grow the strength? How do we grow this without turning against ourselves? You know, that voice that comes on, says you can do better, the one that sounds like your inner coach, until it starts to feel like your inner bully. That one. We all have it. That part of us confuses discipline and self-punishment. It starts off by saying things like, I'm just holding myself to a higher standard. And before you know it, you're negotiating with yourself about whether you've earned a rest or a break or even a moment of ease. So today we are diving deep into the subtle difference between this self-discipline and self-abuse, and how to grow without turning against yourself. Because growth without kindness, as I've often discussed in this channel, is just another form of self-harm dressed up as self-improvement. But let's go there with honesty, with a little bit of humor, maybe and a little bit of self-compassion for all the times we've pushed too hard. So when try harder turns into not enough. Let's start with some psychology. Why do we push ourselves past our healthy limits? Even when we know it hurts. This is a question you can ask. Why do we push ourselves past this limit? We've seen it. We've seen it in many areas of life. We keep telling ourselves, oh, you need to push harder, even though it really hurts. It's because the mind mistakes control for safety. From an early age, many of us were rewarded for performance. Good job. You're so disciplined. You're such a hard worker. Our brains learn to love that and seek some sort of validation from our achievements. So when our adult life feels uncertain, we default to those childhood patterns. If I can just do more, achieve more, prove more, I'll feel the safety, I'll feel the validation, I'll feel the love. But here's a trap. Another trap. When discipline comes from fear, not love, it stops being growth and starts being punishment. Again, let me tell you a story about myself. A few years ago, I was training for a specific fitness goal, the kind where you think you're chasing strength. It's like you will see this in the gym all the time. But I was going for it. I was trying to lift as much as possible. And every session felt like a difficult session, first of all, because it is challenging exercise. But every missed session felt like a failure. Every day off felt like guilt. And when I finally hit that goal, it didn't even feel like victory. It just felt like, okay, what's next? The relief, that voice in my head might shut up for a day, didn't happen. The next voice started to kick in. Okay, this is too easy now. We should do something else. Or this was not challenging enough. This was just a very stupid goal. Why would you even do that? And that's when I realized something really powerful. In that moment, I was fearful. It was the fear in me of not being good enough. It's the fear that was brought to me at an early age when I would lose games, lose matches. Speaking from perspective, lose things. A fear that everyone around me would not appreciate it. So the fear of that led me to believe like whatever I did does not really matter, but whatever someone else does matters. And this came from fear. And it's just anxiety wearing a motivational t-shirt. The true discipline doesn't come from I must. It comes from I care. And the difference is massive. One releases stress hormones, and the other releases dopamine and serotonin. I know there's this cortisol is called as the stress hormone, but it serves some purposes. It actually helps us focus. But in this instance, chronic stress, things like that, cortisol level always high is a problem. So every day would be high activity, high stress environments every day, and the hormone levels are high. So that is why we call it chronic stress, because we think about that all the time. Every time you turn up, every time you show up, every time you don't show up, you are punishing yourself. So true discipline doesn't come from this I must or I must care. It comes from I must care or I care. So if you ever wonder whether your discipline is healthy, ask yourself this simple question. Is my energy aligned with what I'm doing? Or in other words, is my effort energizing me or exhausting me? Now you can come back and say, well, if we have to grow, there are some things which are exhausting, but that's a part of life. Get it. But that still leaves you energized for the next time. And that doesn't stop you from exploring new ideas, exploring different things. So if it's energizing, it'll give you something which you know is true. But if it's exhausting, it'll always be a constant battle. And if it's as the latter, you're probably not being disciplined. You're being driven, and there's a difference. So let us try to find effort that is energizing. And this is part of the soft strength habit, is finding effort that energizes you and starting off with yourself, wherever you are. And it's funny how all of this sounds so trivial. But again, this is the most profound thing I have experienced in my life, is the soft strength. And I don't even know how to explain it even more in detail, but it is what it is. So let us look at it in some other angles as well. Let's go to some philosophy and spirituality and see what they have to say about this. So in Eastern philosophy, particularly Buddhism, there's an idea called the middle way. When Buddha was a seeker, he first lived in luxury, then went to extremes of deprivation, starving, punishing, rejecting himself, thinking that pain would bring enlightenment. But enlightenment didn't come from suffering. It came from balance, equanimity. When he finally sat under the Bodhi tree, he had this realization: neither indulgence nor denial brings liberation. The truth lives in what he called the middle way. That's discipline in its purest form. Balanced awareness. You show up, you practice, you care. But you don't use the practice to punish the person practicing. And in yoga philosophy, this is also known as ahimsa, the principle of non-harm. We often think that means don't hurt other people, but ahimsa begins with the self. Every time you push your body and mind and it's begging for rest, every time you judge yourself for not being productive enough, every time you call your softness weakness, you're practicing subtle violence against yourself. And again, this is the paradox we've been talking about this entire session, is the softer you are with yourself, the stronger you become. Because kindness builds sustainability. And just reminding you that softer you are, you don't have to be soft to others, or you don't have to become soft around people. It is softness within yourself. There's a difference. Being soft around people where you are a pushover or you feel like uh, you've been manipulated and things like that. That is external. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the softness within you. Because kindness builds stability, force burns out. It's like a bowstring. Too tight, it snaps. Too loose, it's useless. But when tension and ease are in harmony, when the precision of that comes into life, then you start to see grace. So, the lesson which I've learned from these two ideas is not don't be disciplined, is don't be cruel about your discipline. Because cruelty never leads to awakening, only resistance does. So, in practicality, what does it mean like, and what do we have to do? Like, okay, all this sounds amazing, or it might be just another self-help talk. But there's some things we can do. Let's get real. What does it actually look like in daily life? It looks like this. Again, I go to the example I know. You are at the gym. Maybe you are not at the gym. Maybe you are at a place where you fancy. So maybe just change the word gym for something. You are tired. You promised yourself you'll do certain things. And your mind goes, don't quit now. Winner never quits. But your body is whispering, I'm done. Listening to body, who do you listen to? Old version of you thinking discipline means overriding that whisper, or the wiser version of you who knows discipline means listening more deeply. It's not giving up, it's tuning in. Or maybe you're working late, telling yourself, I'll rest when the project's done, or I will rest whenever I'm dead. This is kind of a new narrative. It's like, oh, I'll rest when I'm dead. I'll sleep when I'm dead. But the truth is, the project never ends. So instead, you try to do something radical. You close the laptop, take a walk, and return with more clarity than hours of grinding ever have give you. And this discipline we're talking about is presence. And here's the thing, being kind to yourself isn't about it's not about comfort. It's about respect. Respecting your mind enough to rest it. Respecting your body enough to nourish it. Respecting your time enough not to waste it on guilt. That's why self-respect looks like in practice. Saying, I can still grow, but I won't do it through cruelty. Because honestly, if self-help becomes self-hurt, which is often happening in these circles where you feel like you are missing out because someone is saying some things which you should be doing and you don't do it, you feel the guilt and you hurt yourself. This is the biggest problem in self-help is that, which as people who work in this space should be mindfully aware of, is not that there is just one way to do things. There are millions of ways, if not billions, because I think each one of us has a different way, slightly. But if self-help becomes self-hurt, we miss the point. So let's just put this all together in a guided reflection. So let's take a moment together. If you are able to, close your eyes. Or soften your gaze. Take a deep breath in through your nose and slowly exhale through your mouth. And just ask yourself quietly, where in my life am I trying to grow, but doing it through pressure instead of love? Notice what comes up. Maybe it's your body, maybe it's your work, maybe it's your relationships. No need to fix it, just notice. Now imagine what that area of your life would look like if you practiced with kindness. And if your inner coach spoke like your best friend, if every effort came from care, take one more breath and silently say to yourself, I can be consistent and compassionate at the same time. And that's your practice for the week. That's today's practice. Remember, self discipline without self compassion is just another ego trick. Be devoted to your growth, but do it with the greatness and gentleness, because you can't hit yourself into wholeness. So, thank you for joining me in this exploration. If this episode resonated, share it with someone who's learning to soften without losing strength. And before you go, here's your journaling question for today. What would my daily discipline look like if it came from love instead of fear? So, thank you for tuning in. I'll see you again next time.